Good morning. Welcome to the Rotary Club of Hudson. My name is Marilyn Orr, President of the club, and we are thrilled to have you join us today. This meeting broadcast is available on HCTV, as well as our Rotary of Hudson YouTube channel and Facebook. Our club meets weekly using this digital platform, Zoom. When we meet in person, it's at Laurel Lake Retirement Community for breakfast. We hope to get back to that soon. We meet most Wednesday mornings from 7:15 to 8:30 a.m. So come out to join us for a meeting. We would love to have you as a guest. To learn more about Rotary, our club, and the impact we are having on our local community and the world, please visit our website, rotaryhudson.org. So enjoy this meeting today and help us share the message that Rotary opens doors of opportunity.
Good morning, Rotarians and guests. Welcome to the Rotary Club of Hudson. I'm Ron Strobel, the Sergeant at Arms. Our invocation this morning is by Rich Warfield.
Those guys are a little slow in technology, so let us bow our heads. I think, Father, together with all Rotarians, thank you for the facility to allow us to meet in and allow the session of the City Council, the school board, to be as comfortable and cordial as possible. Thank you for this year and this day that we gave.
Thank you, Rich. And to lead us in the pledge and the four-way test this morning, Dan Williams.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And forward test. First, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it build goodwill and better friendships? And fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Thank you, Dan. And now our president, Pat Shearer.
Thank you, Ron. Just a couple of quick announcements this morning. One is Rich Warfield has agreed to chair our fall fundraiser, and we will be kicking that off next week at our club meeting. So be prepared for that. And that's an integral for us being able to fund our scholarships for next spring. So we need all of us to be prepared and to participate in that fundraiser. Membership, just a reminder that our goal by the end of June is to be at 72 members, and I believe right now we are at 61. So we have a little more lifting to do. So please keep inviting members to come to meetings so that we can. We have several in the pipeline, but we need more in order to get to our 72. So it's getting more difficult finding great quotes about local politics. So I went way back to Plato. One of the penalties for refusing to participate in politics is that you end up being governed by those who are inferior. And with that, we will turn it over to Dave Basil for today's program.
Thank you, President Pat. Quite frankly, I'm not certain how to take that comment. Good morning, fellow Rotarians and guests. I am Dave Basil, And it's my pleasure to welcome you here this morning as we continue our candidate sessions this morning with 2 more candidates for City Council. As you know, there are 3 at-large seats on City Council that are up on this November's ballot. There are 8 candidates for those 3 seats. The top 3 finishers in the election will be sworn in at the first City Council meeting in December. As in the past, I will briefly introduce each candidate. They will have 5 minutes to offer their prepared opening remarks outlining their qualifications and views on the issues they deem important. Following that, there will be a question and answer period. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer a question. Questions from those with us in the room can be posed at the center mic in the center aisle. Those on Zoom can pose questions, and their questions will be read by one of the moderators. We ask that you not applaud individual responses and hold your applause out of respect for all who are participating. A question can generally be presented in about 20 to 30 seconds. We ask that you avoid long preambles and statements that reduce the amount of time available to others to ask questions that they would like to get the answer to. With that, we will proceed with the first candidate for this morning. It's Dr. Patricia Goetz. Dr. Goetz grew up in the Toledo area, attended Seton Hill College in Greensburg, Pennsylvania, and then graduated from the University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine. After living in Pittsburgh, she and her husband, Gregory, and 3 daughters moved to Shaker Heights, Ohio. They lived there for 17 years until Patricia and Gregory moved to a home in Hudson's Historic District in 2005. Her daughter Emily, son-in-law, and their 3 daughters live, or 3 children, excuse me, also live in Hudson. Dr. Goetz chose her specialty as child and adolescent psychiatry. She has worked in public mental health as Chief Clinical Officer of the Stark County Mental Health Board and as a consultant to the Ohio Department of Mental Health Office of Children's Services. She was also the first woman to be president of the medical staff at Laurelwood Hospital and now works part-time at Catholic Charities, a public mental health clinic in Worcester. She also consults with the Ohio Department of Mental Health and Recovery Services Center of Excellence for Children's Services at Case Western Reserve University and has been an assistant professor of child and adolescent psychiatry at Case for over 30 years. Her volunteer activities include medical missionary work in Honduras, service on the board of Montana de Luz, a center for children with HIV in Honduras, the Portage County Mental Health Board, and the Hudson Coalition for Children's Mental Health. Patricia has also played clarinet in the Western Reserve Community Band for 9 years. She is a member of this Rotary Club and is on the regional committee for the Gift of Life. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Patricia Goetz.
Good morning, fellow Rotarians. Thank you for having me here. To be an effective, successful leader, you have to be able to overcome challenges. And I'm Dr. Patricia Goetz, and I have the leadership skills to lead Hudson on City Council. So you may ask, well, what have been your challenges? These started very early. When I was 6, my mother unexpectedly died, and I was sent to an orphanage and lived there for a year. I was then adopted by a wonderful family who really supported my dreams. We didn't have a lot of money, so I paid my own way through college and medical school. But my personal challenges didn't stop there. I have a severely handicapped daughter. My middle daughter died 19 years ago, and 13 years ago, my husband passed away from ALS. These personal challenges have made me empathic, tough, and resilient, the kind of qualities we need here in Hudson. On my professional challenges, When I went to medical school, there were only 7% of the women in my class were women. The glass ceiling was just starting to crack. In medical school, I learned critical thinking, I learned problem solving, but one of the important things I learned was how to work in a team. For the past 19 years, I worked in a group that we made home visits to help parents and children manage their severe behavioral difficulties. This only worked because we worked as a team. The treatment would not have been successful unless we worked as a team. Another quality of leadership is how to be a strategic planner. Through my work on the county and state level, I helped strategic plan to set up a system of care for mental health services for children. Again, all these personal and professional challenges have helped me become empathic, to be collaborative, and to problem solve in a strength-based way. These are the qualities that we need in our leadership in Hudson. As you probably know, Hudson is strong financially, but will it remain so if we're not seen as a welcoming community to families and to businesses? As you might know, 21% of the people who live in Hudson work in Hudson. For example, my son-in-law works in Akron. Mrs. Norman works in Cleveland. All of their income tax goes to those cities. The only thing they pay to our general fund is 5% of their property taxes. So it's very important because the bulk of our income comes from the workers who come into Hudson. We need to make Hudson be seen as a positive place to work, not derisive and hateful. I've walked around Hudson many, many hours in the past few months, and the people of Hudson are wonderful. This is not who we are. We are not divisive. It's important that people know that. Soon we'll be at the point where if we don't get the revenue from these workers, we won't have any money to do our sewer, to do our roads, and to do our general services. So it's really important that we be seen as positive. There are so many great people in our Hudson community, and we need to have leadership that sets a positive tone. We have what it takes to have a wonderful city now and in the future. So in this upcoming election, we have the opportunity to show the rest of the country that who we really are. If you want a leader that reflects those values, then you should vote for Patricia Goetz for City Council at large on November 2nd. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Goetz. Next, we will hear from Sarah Norman. Sarah is a 21-year resident of Hudson, having moved here in 2000 from Shaker Heights. Seems like Hudson is a popular destination for folks coming from Shaker Heights. She and her husband Forrest raised their 4 children through Hudson City Schools. She holds a bachelor's degree in art history from Goucher College in Baltimore, a certificate in historic preservation from the University of Florida, and a law degree from Case Western Reserve University. She is admitted to practice in both Ohio and Indiana. Her legal career is focused on historic preservation and zoning clients. After that, her career path included serving as a children's ministries director and handbell choir director. Presently, she is employed as a document support staff for the Cuyahoga Land Bank, where she oversees document management for almost 17,000 properties, as well as the company's compliance with Ohio's Sunshine Law. She has volunteered as a Twins Day Festival committee member for 15 years and has served as its executive director for the last 6 years. Sarah has also served on Hudson's Cemetery Board for 5 years. Please join me in welcoming Sarah Norman.
Well, juggling is obviously not my forte. Thank you, Rotarians, for making this event possible today. I think it's very important for people to be able to see their candidates in person and to hear from them directly. So for all of us, thank you for making this happen. I'd like to spend my time this morning telling you about my campaign, the 4 main points: transparent government, infrastructure equity, responsible spending, and thoughtful development are the same as last year. The city's needs have not changed drastically, but what has changed is the details that we are talking about in that framework. Transparent government is about keeping the decision-making processes open to the public for scrutiny. It's about citizens being able to know how their government is structured and where they need to go for answers, but it's also about being honest about our legislative intentions and motivations. People are really struggling right now, as I go door to door, to make sense of the promise the council made about collecting the people's feedback about phase 2. And here we are a few months later, entertaining the 3rd do or die proposal for that property. The concerns are about how this came to be and who is really behind it. Too many residents feel disconnected from their government or feel that some of the leadership isn't particularly interested in their real needs. Basically, residents want to feel secure that leaders that they elect can be trusted, and transparency builds trust. I am personally committed to transparency in all that I do. And if you have worked with me on any significant project at all, you already know that about me. Now, infrastructure equity is a phrase that I coined last year, and I had to explain a lot. It basically encapsulates the concept that the standard of living in Hudson is not the same for everyone. It depends on where you live. When the township and village merged almost 30 years ago, many promises were made about equalizing all of this, and precious little has happened. What we have learned from the pandemic is that reliable electricity matters. So part of our infrastructure issues in the coming years will be about resolving the loss of 42% of our current electricity portfolio. But another part is about making modern amenities available to the outlying parts of the city before the EPA decides to stop issuing permits for septic systems. It's time for Hudson to focus on the essentials instead of having the non-essentials like velocity broadband commanding staff and resources. I want Hudson to be treated as the unified city that it is, and that's why I have a lot less of explaining to do this year about infrastructure equity. Now, responsible spending looks like it may be easy to accomplish because Hudson has been blessed with a surplus for several years. But our spending choices, making them well, is a very different animal than just having excess money. A lot of citizens are upset about the overages on the city hall and the fact that it hasn't been used very much for 2 years. We're not going to undo that decision, but we need to guard against that kind of decision in the future. I am the candidate who wants every expenditure to serve the most number of people possible, not to pad pet projects for a limited number of people. This is the ethos that I bring to the job. Thoughtful development is going to be more than a one-person initiative, given our very old land development code. Oh, it gets a Band-Aid every now and then with a sign ordinance update or a few definitions being changed. But it is an unwieldy 400 pages of overly complication of some very 1950s ideas about how zoning works. What makes Hudson a great place to live? You and I would agree first that it is the people. But part of it is also our history and the visible landscape, both the built and the unbuilt, that reflects a small town established by New England farmers over 200 years ago. We had the courage to protect that landscape and stand against overdevelopment in the 1990s with our housing development lottery. But in the last 10 to 20 years, that courage has atrophied, and our competitive edge, the things that make Hudson feel distinct from all other places, is very much at risk. So I see hard work ahead to develop a modern zoning code and to create a consistent, meaningful office of zoning enforcement and assistance. We need to address the aging housing stock in this town. We need to let development be driven by the realities of our infrastructure capabilities and not vice versa. So this is my vision, and these are my characteristics: transparency, trust, problem solving, integrity, responsibility, well-distributed benefits, thoughtfulness, and fair dealing. I'm Sarah Norman, and I deserve your vote for Hudson City Council at large.
Candidates for their opening statements. We'll now start the question and answer period. Any questions from those with us in the room? Yes, Ron.
Ron Strobel, and I'd like both of your opinions on the current proposal for phase 2, and also how you feel about the short fuse on this one, where the decision has to be made within the next 2 months. And the last time around, it took actually 5 years, but the last 3 years of decision making to come up with something that was decent. Thank you.
I love that question. Last year, phase 2 was the favorite topic of everyone going door to door. And I'm not going to tell you that Fairmount has not proposed a better plan. They in fact have. And I'm not going to tell you that Fairmount is not a good developer, because they have a great reputation. I believe that the devil is going to be in the details of the contract. I am not a person who's easily distracted by the dog and pony show with a beautiful picture and something that looks appealing visually. I want to read the contract and the fine print and the footnotes, because I believe that's going to be a difficult thing. One of the things that concerns me greatly is that this is the third proposal that has been an ultimatum from Fairmount. And I really don't like Hudson being treated that way. I'm not saying we couldn't go forward with this particular development, but again, we need to know those details, and those need to be hammered out. And I don't believe that they are time sensitive. As I was thinking about this, I realized it was very analogous to me to the Sydney Opera House. If you have not been to Australia, you still know what the Sydney Opera House looks like. The design was so alluring to the panel of judges that they pulled that particular design out of a bunch of rejects and awarded the contract, even though they didn't know how to build a building with parabolic shapes. And so this project not only went 10 years over completion time, but 14 times its budget of $7 million to cost $100 million. And to this day, it remains a maintenance headache. I do not want phase 2 to be Hudson's Sydney Opera House moment. The people are hungry for peace on this topic. That's their motivation. And the sooner we can get to peace, the better we'll be as a city. But we must not sacrifice the good of the city for this hurried process. So I'll be in favor, but I'll be interested to see what happens.
Many of the individuals I've talked to around the city want something done with that vacant lot, even the people on Owen Brown. And it does seem like there are many more people that are in favor of this new proposal. We don't know for sure, because we're just starting tonight to have a open house so people can talk and find out more details. A lot of the architectural details, all of that would occur after the contract has been signed. We probably need a few other things, like a traffic initiative to see what the traffic would be if these are built. My understanding from Fairmount is that the driver behind the deadline was Heinens, that they felt they needed to know very soon in order to either have a new Heinens or to remodel. I do feel that trying to have this done by December 1st is pretty overwhelming, and I don't think it will happen. So if that doesn't happen, then Heinens may stay where it is, and then we'll come up with a different proposal, what to do with that particular tract of land there.
Okay, thank you. Other questions from the room? Mimi.
I have a question related to your perspective about the role of elected officials and how you propose to be accountable to the citizens. And with respect to that, the strategy that you will use in your relationship with the city manager form of governance, and is that a system that you will continue to support?
We've had a city manager government here since, I think, 1958, and it has worked very well. Governing a city of this size needs a professional person who has the specific training to do that. And so I feel very strongly that we need to continue the city manager, city council form of government. Our current city manager has been excellent. Her staff absolutely love her. And again, that's a sign of a good leader, somebody that's been able to work well with their staff. I know there's been a lot of questions about, is there transparency? I don't know what else the city and the city council members can do. You can have all of our emails. You can have the city council meetings are all recorded, so are the subcommittees. So what I would do is reach out more to the community by having more town meetings. And that may be a way to try to get information out in a really positive way.
So one of the things I notice about going door to door is that there's a randomness to what's on the other side of the door. And sometimes you meet a person who loves to talk about politics, and sometimes you meet someone who just had a horrible argument or their pet died, and you really have to be prepared to meet people where they are. And that's one of the skills that I will bring to this job, because I know that not everyone is against Hudson's government. I know that not everyone is against politicians, but we have to meet people where they are and view their needs as real and their concerns as being very true to them, even if we don't personally agree with the situation. Related to the form of government, I have an old Hoosier saying that goes, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I really do believe that our system requires trained professionals. That's why there are urban affairs, urban planning, city management and administration degrees offered, because it is a valid form of academic study. And the nature of running a city has changed dramatically since back in the day, say 100 years ago, when we just might elect whoever had gone to college because they were the smartest person we had around to run the city. It's a very different job today in the modern world. So I don't foresee any changes related to that at all. I do believe that there's more to transparency than just what is available on public meetings and in emails. And a test of character is what you do when you think no one is looking. So I strive to always conduct myself in a way that if anyone would report on what I'm doing at that moment, I'll be proud to have been doing it. That's the kind of leadership that I would bring to this job.
Thank you. Yes. Could you identify, excuse me, could you identify yourself, please? Just.
You're the only candidate I have ever heard address our need for soil remediation. Can you expound on that? What does Dr. Goetz think of our current councilwoman and former environmental committee member never addressing an environmental remediation in favor of pollution development? Thank you.
So soil remediation is a process of making sure that you have the contaminants taken out of the soil I know that this was a topic that had come up last year in the conversation related to phase two. Phase two becomes a very complicated issue because there's also a well underneath the Windstream property, and it's entangled very greatly. So one of the things I had proposed last year was that we use a period of time for phytoremediation, which is where you use plants to clean soil in the phase two area. This is actually a very appealing topic, not only to me, but a lot of people, because if you can plant some of the more powerful phytoremediators, you do much more good work in a shorter amount of time. And that's the time that we would use to buy ourselves the space to create a great development in that location. So that was the gist of where that topic came from. I had a lot of conversations with people about that door to door last year, until just a week or so ago. Phase two was not the favorite question in front of everyone's mind, but with this new proposal, it certainly has come back up again. A rushed proposal to build is not going to allow for that kind of opportunity. So again, time is an ingredient, whether you're baking or whether you're living life. Time is a valuable asset and to be used well. And so I would love to see more time on phase two.
One of the things I've learned over the years is to accept that there are things that I don't know. And one of the things are things about soil remediation, but the people who do know that work at the city. Tom Sheridan has talked at length about the fact that the city has done the remediation on that particular land, and that problem is gone.
Thank you. Other questions from the room? Before we do follow-up questions, we want to give everybody a chance. Yes, sir.
Recently, we were all aware of the incident we had with the school board and soon Hudson there on their period of as a representative of the city, it was a city in what would be a national election, international. If we're members of the council, how would you address the situation to Hudson Village, but also to prevent
Yes, the mayor is able as a private citizen to go and express his opinions. What was the problem is at that meeting, he was expressing his opinion as the mayor, identified himself as that, and that was not with the blessing of city council. And that's how our system works. So if I was on city council, I would continue to request that he make an apology. And if not, I would draft a resolution that the city council did not support what the mayor did at that meeting.
I appreciate the question. It is a titillating question because everyone's excited about that. And I have had to answer plenty of questions as I'm walking 4 to 5 miles every Saturday and Sunday to talk to people. They want to know answers to that particular question. I don't like to focus on the mayor's actions because it distracts from the real and very serious problem that was uncovered at our school district. And my sympathies are great for the Board of Education and the work that they have to do to build the trust back that they are in fact caring for our children in proper ways. I believe they set great policies that they think are in fact helping. They can't always trust the people who are executing those policies, but that's not our issue. That's not my circus. That's not my monkeys. I realized as I saw social media make the mayor go viral that we had to address part of our civil discourse in this town. It's unfortunate when non-lawyers make statements about the law. That was my first thought. Having worked as a deputy county prosecutor and prosecuting child molesters and child abusers, I know how difficult it is to make those charges stick because people, as humans, we resist the notion that that would ever be able to happen. But I believe the appropriate place is for Hudson to just back off from the emotions a little bit, realize what is within our jurisdiction and what is not. That was perhaps an overlap, very unfortunate one. And if the mayor had attended my webinar this summer on addressing public bodies, I'm pretty sure his speech wouldn't have sounded like that.
Okay, thank you. I think we have a couple of questions coming in via chat.
Hudson's law on campaign finance, adopted in 2008 and reaffirmed in August of 2021, is designed to prevent corruption and promote ethics and integrity in government. It prohibits accepting campaign contributions in excess of $100 per person or group. Do both of you intend to follow this law?
Well, you know, just like a wedding isn't real if you don't do the chicken dance, it's not a real council debate if you haven't been asked this question. So last year when I was running for the at-large seat, I had made a very purposeful claim to stick by this law and to abide by it. But I read it in the process and I conferred with my attorney, who is a former ACLU attorney and very well versed in constitutional law issues. And we found a number of flaws with this. And one of the things I did too was to research the legislative history. And this has a very interesting legislative history because this ordinance was an act of vengeance. The successful Ward 1 councilman in 2008 was very angry that an outside entity had mentioned his opponent favorably, and he wanted vengeance against that and the other person involved. I don't think that's ever a good basis for a law. So in this campaign, I announced to the people who were my supporters last year that I was going to not obey this law. Now, whether that has actually happened is a very interesting thing, because what we have discovered is that the city of Hudson has actually frozen the people's participation in government through a law that cannot be enforced in any way, shape, or form, except through public shaming. And that was the design of the writer of this law. He said so at the council meeting. We don't need an enforcement provision, he said. We can just call people out publicly when they mess up. I don't think there's such a thing as contributing too much of political speech to our current situation. So if you are interested in enforcing this law against me, I invite the city to come up with a way of making that happen.
As anyone who has been trained in law, you know that if you feel a law is unconstitutional, then you should take it to court. That hasn't happened. Talking to a constitutional lawyer is giving you ideas, but to really do something, you would need to take it to court. I'm asking the citizens of Hudson, do you want to have a person on your city council who's willing to break one of our laws?
Thank you. Other questions coming in from chat?
Diversity, equity, and inclusion training has been around for a number of years. They do it at the Cleveland Clinic. They do it at Progressive Insurance. They do it at many of the major law firms around the area. So if it's good for these places, why wouldn't it be good for Hudson, for our city council members and for our city staff? Diversity, equity, and inclusion is a way to help us be kind to other people who are not like us and to understand where they're coming from. It is not critical race theory. It is really this idea of how can we be genuine, collaborative, and empathic with everyone that's in our city. We need to show the country and the county and the state that we are a city that wants to be inclusive, that wants to be welcoming to everybody. And I think that that would be a great step to show that.
Part of the importance of knowing how the mayor should stay in his lane is knowing how the city government is enclosed, limited in the things that they are and are not allowed to do. I am a believing Christian, and I'm not afraid to say so. And I believe that every single person I meet is a child of God who deserves my love, my compassion, and my respect. It does not change because their skin color is different, because they're from a different ethnicity, or because they have a different background from me. When you bring this kind of ethos into a city position and you understand the boundaries that are placed by the Constitution around the city government, you realize that the government is never in a position to command uniformity of thought or to even prescribe what the thoughts should be. So I absolutely advocate that we treat each other with Christian compassion and love. If you are not if you're not a Christian, you can still be compassionate and you can still love people. We have a bullying problem in this town that has been revealed over and over and over. And the bullying stops with each one of us. I am a person who is opposed to bullying, and I will always oppose bullying. And I will always work for the best of everyone in this city, no matter what their background, their skin color, or how long they even intend to live here. Hudson will be great when all of us commit to being honest, to being kind, and to being compassionate. That's my position on DEI training. If we're going to teach compassion and kindness, we can start right now. We don't need to fund it with taxpayer dollars.
Any other questions from the room before we go back to chat? Okay, again, we'll take other questions before we do any follow-up. Yes, Chris.
Thanks, Chris Foster. I continue to hear the velocity broadband is required element of the city of Hudson in order to grow our business here. Yet around the time that velocity broadband was developed, me as a private citizen was able to draw business class internet service into my home on Atterbury Boulevard. Can you explain your beliefs around the investments in velocity broadband and why the city believes it's so vital to spend $5 million to build out infrastructure when a resident could build the infrastructure in their own home?
I have had the opportunity to talk to a lot of customers of Velocity Broadband, and I have to tell you that I believe at the beginning it was great. I think it was a fabulous idea. The customers who use it, the commercial customers especially, are very satisfied with it. But the problem is the technology is beginning to eclipse us, and we are a government. We do not have the deep research and development pockets that the other competitors to this service have. So we're at a point now, I believe, because our new member sign up has really flattened, we need to make some very serious decisions about how we go forward. What we had to do was what we had to do. Where we have to go is another question. It seems like to me the best thing that we can do in this city is look for a willing vendor who would purchase it from us, be able to upgrade it, be able to extend it. We have those services available now from other competing interests, and the government should just not be in the business of being in business. Those are my thoughts on Velocity.
First off, the investment was $3.8 million, not $5 million. I have talked with many of the commercial customers and they are very pleased with it. We have 284 commercial customers and 122 residential customers. Even though it was started just for business, anybody that lives along the trunk lines are able to do this. There's been talk about the private providers who didn't want to do anything back in 2015 are now starting to do some things. We're talking about 5G, but people don't understand that you still need some kind of cable to go from the tower, and that is old technology. I think Windstream is doing some fiber optic, but not much. So people I've talked to who've gotten the new Kinetic say it's not been any better than the old. The federal government is thinking about making a broadband a utility, which would give us more money in order to invest in this. I think it'd be wonderful if we could expand it throughout the community, but that would take more money and a levy in order to do that. So I still feel that broadband, Velocity Broadband has been an excellent investment and will continue to be so for our city.
Thank you. And it looks like we're going to be coming up on the last question. Looks like we have one from Zoom. Patrick?
This is from Andrea Busey. The council position is intended to be nonpartisan with posters in a victory center and strong affiliations with donations from a national party. How would both of you refrain from being captive to your donors?
I have pledged to be nonpartisan. I support some candidates. Many candidates on our school board are from the Republican Party, but they're not running as partisans. I support a judge who's an excellent judge, Lisa Coates. She also happens to be a Republican. But I feel on the local level, we should not be Democrat or Republican. I'm not sure why there is that Republican Victory Center. There was a lot of talk about a event that I was having. I was part of a group that was having. It happened to be posted on a website that we had nothing to do with, and people got very upset about that. But we are not, and I am not taking any money from a political group. I'm not being endorsed by a political group, and I'm going to remain nonpartisan.
If you have never run for public office before, it's very easy to think that throwing the term nonpartisan around actually means something. But it's impossible when you're actually running to not be aligned with one group or the other, because both of the parties, and that's the partisan part that we're referring to, both of the parties have deep troves of information, data, and volunteers that if we resist being affiliated with, we'll never tap into, and we won't be the winners. I was really thrilled to see that the Democratic Club was hosting a volunteer rally. They're not the people I'm affiliated with, but I respect the honesty with which they were able to be public about that in a town that has tried to cow people with the nonpartisan talk. Having said that, I am not a party girl, and I am not a person who can be purchased. I have worked very hard to maintain my intellectual and my moral independence for 55 years, and I have succeeded at doing so. I am not ashamed to be affiliated with anyone, in particular if they're good people, because I care about being with people who are honest and have integrity and are good. They're helpful people. Why would I be ashamed that they are Republicans? I would not be. So when we talk about being nonpartisan, let's also remember this is not the same thing as being unbiased. And many of our nonpartisan groups have been very biased, including some of our nonpartisan leaders. The bias that we have had on city council by some of the members has prevented the people from making a decision about roles and responsibilities of the mayor and whether or not they should have term limits for council members. That's the effect of the bias, and the nonpartisanship has not assisted in answering those questions.
Okay, thank you. Again, let's give an expression of appreciation for these candidates. That's going to be the last question we can take today.
Thank you very much. So Dr. Goetz, you were willing to do the drawing of the ticket for our raffle this. Thank you very much. And the winning ticket number is 716-611. 611. It's a whopping $9 payout, and the jackpot is up to $233. Put it in the back end of the pot. You gonna come pick a marble? You're not willing to put the jackpot back in. Okay, got it. I'll come over this way, Bill. Oop. Oh, not the black marble. All right. So the pot will stay. And for our dad joke of the day. How can you tell if a vampire is sick? They're coughing.